Welcome back, everyone, and hope you had a great summer. So, since the new school season is starting up, I wanted to give you a few updates on the projects I've been working on and also give you a game review. So, in terms of the projects, I just finished my first chess book called Best Stories in Chess, and I'll put the link in the description below. It's a collection of short stories about world champions and grandmasters that make chess really come to life. Apart from that, I also finished a course on the French defense, which you will find on ChessFlow, which is a new chess platform that my friend Jordy made. And I'll also put a link when it becomes available. And finally, I am still taking a limited number of private students, especially adults, especially motivated adults who want to take their game up to the next level. So I'll put my email in the description and you can email me in if you're interested. So let's get right to the game. I wanted to show you a game from 2 years ago where I was playing in the Czech Republic in a city called Ostrava. The tournament is called Ostravsky Konik. I can recommend it. It was well organized, well put together, and this game helped me get second place in the end as we beat Grandmaster Petro Golubko. So it is a French defense, which is one reason why I wanted to show it to you. So you can see how the French can be played for a win, and it's a very combative opening. It doesn't have to be dry, doesn't have to be boring at all. So my opponent wanted to surprise me, and this is one of his sidelines. Thankfully, I did see that he plays Queen E2. So I had a setup prepared, so to say, and it's not what I recommended, of course, but it's interesting nonetheless. Against Queen E2, the problem is that the usual move like d5 isn't very good. After pawn takes, queen takes, this is like a bad Scandinavian. And we could play knight f6. There are many playable moves. Here, e5, knight d5, c4 is an interesting Alekhine position. We can also play bishop e7, that's the line. Most players, they just go for some sort of Sicilian, where after knight c6, g6, bishop g7, knight e7, e5 is a very solid setup, but it wasn't what I had in mind for this game. At that time, I was playing a lot of setups with b6 and hedgehogs in particular, so I thought this would be a good try to get a hedgehog structure. Because in the hedgehog, the queen isn't really fantastic on a2, and the bishop should be on d3 or c4. It has no business being on g2 in a hedgehog, or at least in the modern. If we were to play like g6 in a modern, the bishop on g2 is not very scary, you know? So, after b6, they don't want the center, and he wants to commit to the King's Indian attack setup with g3, queen e2, and bishop g2. One of the ideas of all this is that if they can get something like, let's say knight f6, and then we play here d5, e5, here d3, and then at some point later on bishop g2, knight c6, knight f3. I'm just trying to get you the rough sort of position so you get a feel for it. c4 is pretty important. Right, and after c4, d4 is a good King's Indian for white, almost like some sort of reverse Benoni, but a good one, because white has this square and black doesn't really have d5. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to avoid by playing the hedgehog structure. And after bishop e7, bishop g2, knight f6, d3, bishop e7. So first we just develop, and I have to be a little bit careful with e5s, but thankfully they don't work just yet. And after knight h3, clearly the idea is to go for f4 because they don't want to put anything in the way of the pawn, right? And the knight often comes in handy. You can jump in here, can jump in there. He's not blocking their attack. So it's an interesting way to play it. And Petro, he's a decent grandmaster and a very aggressive guy, right? As you can see from this game, which is going to be very double-edged, right? It could have gone either way out of the opening. c5, so far we're playing the typical setup. We could play for d6 and knight d7, typical hedgehog style. I think I was concerned about some e5, which is why I wanted to defend the bishop first, just to take away any tricks. You could also play knight c6, and that allows some sort of knight d5 c4, and again we get a weird Alekhine, I guess. Okay, maybe there's knight d4 there, but I don't want to risk any setup that I'm not familiar with, right? I thought queen c7 is a more flexible move order, but nothing wrong with knight c6, of course. Okay, queen c7, knight c3, and this is also interesting because often they put the pawn here, all right, and then they try to expand later on, or at least they don't give us this square. His idea is that he gets time to kick away my queen, all right, and I don't have time for knight d4. Even if I play knight d4, okay, in some cases, let's say they get something like knight d5, knight a3, then they can play c3 later on. So the knight on d4 is not going to stay there forever, right? Okay, knight d5, and why is this so good for them? Because now they get c3, and a6, the knight gets to where he wants to be anyways, and he can support the center even after b5, let's say, all right? So in the game, we have castle, and would you attack with g4 or castle right now if you were white? So take 3 seconds. Think about how you would play it. Okay. If you would play g4, you're playing just like Petro did. Okay, right on, straight off the bat, here comes the attack. Castle would also be playable, but it gives black time to strike at the center. Let's say something like d5 happens. I thought this position was fairly innocent, because f5 is very hard to get in. This guy is always hanging. d4 is not going to be so easy either. And then we can play d4 ourselves as an idea. All right, just stopping them. And try to open up the queen side. In the future, we have rook d8. Of course, we're happy to take if we get the chance. The knight can come to a fade, and we're fairly flexible. If we can trade off the light square bishop, one day a knight will come to d5, and we're doing great. Okay, this will be the plan. So first, they get their knight here, and then they want to play d4, but we can stop them, right? But in the game, that's not what happened. In the game, they go for g4 right away, going for the attack. And I have to do something. And what does the principle of chess say? Principles say, if your opponent strikes on this side of the board, we must counter in the center. And that's where d5 is coming from. Here, they're in time to kick away the knight, so we lose some of the pressure on the center. And my idea is to say, hey, you want a free pawn? Grab an ice cream, but after that ice cream, it may not taste very well because we open the center completely, right? The bishop is not hanging. Right? There are always tactics to keep him safe here with the king over there. I think I was planning knight a5. That's the first thing that comes into mind because, like I said, bishop is never hanging. We got this little skewer pin going on in the e-file. And then if they want to take, we can even take with the queen. And the structure is all kinds of weird, right? So even if they castle right now, come on, really? The pawn doesn't do me any harm. So if we were just to play rook e8, let's say, they want to trade, even the end games are gonna be fine. I don't think I can be much worse in this position, let's say, because we conquered the file, right? Their knight's all sorts of weird. b5 coming in, rook d8 coming in. We want to play g6 in such positions. Try and freeze the pawns if possible. Their knight is still horrible. So despite being down a pawn, we don't really mind this at all. c4 is an interesting idea. If I can also stop bishop e3 from happening. So even this, I really like to see for black, okay? But back to reality. In reality, both players understand what's going on, right? He understands this idea that I want to blow open the center. He says, no, thank you. So pawn takes. I want to blow up the center as much as possible and say that these guys look silly, look ridiculous, right? If the king is not castled. He wants to castle and get the attack started. So if they took this way, we can get the attack started this way. So in the King's Indian attack, there is always a problem with this bishop, yeah? That if they put him on g2, they lost the a6 f1 diagonal. and then my bishop can snuggle his way into d3, or we can snuggle the knight there as well. Something like that could be very annoying, right? So that's why he decides to take with the bishop and says that, okay, here comes my attack. The knight can crawl into g4, and then knight f6 is coming, and this is really annoying. Queen h5 is in the air, so I really have to watch out. My rooks are inconvenienced. We really have to fix that. If you just follow the principles, you shouldn't get a losing position. This is how I think sometimes. Like, did we do anything criminal out of the opening? Not really. We took out the pieces. Maybe we allowed knight b5. Maybe we should have stopped them with a6. But it's not like we broke all the chess rules. It's not like their position should be winning right now. If anything, we should be better because their knights are weird. A weak castle, they didn't, right? So we just need to stay safe. For now, I'm just playing safe moves. Bishop e3, bishop d6 makes sense because if you think about the squares here, right? Weak square, we want to block the bishop, we want to trade off that guy, we want to get a knight over here, if at all possible. This guy is a target, so we need to fire at the target, say hi to our little friend there, and block their attack as soon as possible. Our knight can't come to the usual square, but maybe he will come to f8, because with a knight on f8, there's never mate, right? And apart from that, we need to start the pawn storm sooner rather than later. We prefer to play b4, and then if they play c4, then d4 is our heaven-sent gift, yeah? And if they take, then we'd like to open up any c-file. This guy's gonna be weak in the future, and also we can get bishop c5 in there, right? If we trade off the bishops, our knights should be happy in this position against their knights. All right, so queen g2. So far, so good. And you can see what's on their mind, yeah? They want to attack. They want knight f2, knight g4. They want to stop knight e7. That's what I wanted to play. And we could just play rook b8, right? I was scared for a second because I saw some goes with takes g6, and there are some sacrifices here, which could be annoying. Could be annoying after, let's say, queen takes e6. Maybe it's okay for us. Maybe after rook f7, we're still doing well, even here. But, you know, when you're seeing it from far away, some positions aren't so clear, especially when they're scary. Sometimes you're guarded by or guided by emotions. Your emotions are telling you, oh, don't go there. Now, what sets apart good players is that they set apart their emotions and say, no, it's okay. I don't see a mate. I'm up material. Why should I care? You know? Okay, so back to the game. I was guided by emotions, so f5 is not a great touch because it helps them open the side they're stronger on. In my mind, we get a tempo on the bishop, we isolate the pawns, we get the knight back to where it needs to be, we open the f-file, this guy is a target as always, they have to waste time moving back the bishop, then we get knight d5 in the near future. I would give up a pawn to get their light squares, to be honest. If I can give up this guy and get their light square bishop and open up that guy, sure, you can have my pawn. So this looked tremendous, right? And then he shocks me, just castles. He says, okay, you can take the bishop. But he finished catching up in development. His own king is safe now. And the attack on the g-file may begin. The knight has a place to be. And it's not so easy to play for black because my attack is still a ways off, right? It's gonna take me a while to get there. But anyways, I want to fast forward to the interesting part. So we get rid of their bishop. That's the whole point of playing f5, right? I didn't like him looking this way at all. In the French, the bishop can be annoying, all right? So that's why I want to get rid of it, even though this is not the normal French type of position with the pawn on e5. If there was a pawn on e5, he becomes even scarier on this diagonal. But anyways, we steal the bishop pair. If they take with the queen, at the very least, I thought knight d4 would be nice, yeah? So I think he has to take with the pawn. And I didn't like e5 because if I play this, yeah, I like not right away, but at some point, if this happens and that happens, or he can play rook takes d6, for example, right? Rook g1 and rook takes d6 and g7's problematic. If I play rook f7, let's try rook f7. Uh-oh, e6 is weak, right? Out of nowhere, we get all these tactical issues, and I don't want to play bishop e7 because it's blocking all of this, and the bishop has no place on f6 either. So the bishop finds himself in a doozy, in an awkward spot, right? I just want to fix him a little bit, get him a bit more comfy, get more room. So that's why queen e7. Also bringing the queen closer, right? If there's a queen near your king, you're usually fine. You don't get mated as easily, right? I find that if they have a queen attacking, you have a queen attacking, you're going to survive. Now, rook g1, obviously. And we need to get this guy working, right? Because the bishop's fine for the moment. We need to defend the bishop so he can stay there a bit longer, so we're not scared of rook takes, right? And the rooks are all serving a purpose, yeah? I remember the Fischer quote. Bobby Fischer liked to remove all bad pieces. He just wouldn't tolerate them. So the second he saw a bad piece, he'd just get rid of it one way or the other. So that's how I try to play chess. It's like, I don't want any bad pieces. If the rook is bad, let's get it somewhere useful. No sleeping beauties allowed, right? King b1, sensible move. They want to get out of harm's way. Sometimes this pawn may be weak, this diagonal may be weak, right? Now, bishop c7. I don't like how the bishop is always getting hit with some tactics, yeah? So just in case we get away from harm's way, the same way he did. If they're not making threats, we have more time, right? Urgency is reflected in the moves. So if they're playing urgent moves and threats, then we need to play urgently. Here, I don't need to play urgently. I have a little bit of time, right? And I want connections between the pieces. So when it's a sharp position, you want to connect to their pieces if they're attacking. So that way you can always trade. You always have counterplay, counterattacks, right? So that's why we need to open up those files. If they control the only open or semi-open file, then we're in trouble, right? So rook e1, he doesn't want any connections. He wants to get away from my rook. Overprotection time, right? If you guys read Nimzovich, he talks about overprotecting important squares, and that's exactly what we do here. We want to economize the defense, right? The queen is not meant to be a defender. The rook doesn't mind it as much. The queen wants to attack at some point, right? Like you'll see in the game. Right? So bishop c1, they drop back. b5, here we go. Since they're not creating threats, we should start doing something. And we overprotected everything. Might as well start the pawn storm. Queen g4, they start picking on us. And you can tell right away where they're looking. You can tell right away what they want. Yeah, they don't want to get hit here. They may want e5 in the future to block our bishop and to fix the target, right? So queen g4 is very annoying. We could play h6, just prophylaxis, but yeah, there is another rule that says don't put pawns and don't move pawns on the side we're weaker. If we're weaker here, do I really want to worry about this? Nope, I'm not interested, right? The second you do that, maybe there will be other weaknesses too, because you weaken squares, right? I'd rather push pawns on the side I'm stronger, right? Where my soldiers have more room and they're scarier, right? It's kind of like if you go into a wrestling ring, yeah? Would you go into a wrestling ring with, Hulk Hogan, rest his soul? Probably not. You don't want that, right? But would you want to play chess with Hulk Hogan? Yes, because you're stronger there. And that's exactly why we want to play d4 right now. Okay, so knight d8. We overprotect once again. We open up both bishops. Knight is fantastic. We don't want to play knight f7, watch out for mate. But we do want to keep an eye on e6, right? And in some cases, he may be useful later on, coming near the king side. If you play very solid chess, like this is very solid, you may be worse, but it's very hard to beat you, right? Because you don't have any obvious weaknesses that they can use, right? So they come in. If we play h6 right away, we could think about it, but I wanted to attack them first because they left a target here. We need to cover all these squares so the queen can come over to help, yeah. In some cases, even queen g6 could be interesting, yeah, just blocking the g file. But the real reason, of course, is to attack that guy. If I can steal that guy, that would be great, right? And then they can't scare me anymore, and their pawn becomes isolated. So that's one of the ideas. Also nice to look on the king a little bit, but the queen is just more useful here, right? Okay, so rook f1, they have to defend. We took away one of the attackers. That's the whole idea. Because if they play f5, I think we can get away with taking. If they play there, I think we can get away with this followed by that if they move away. Okay, so their light squares are weak. Notice that we have the brick layer on the light squares, the bishop. They don't have any brick layers. They have one little brick. If we can break the brick, their light squares collapse. Okay, that's what's going on here. And now rook f1, h6. This guy must go. Okay, we don't like him here, and if he goes back, I'll strongly consider taking. I think we can get away with it too. Okay, because our pieces are all aligned at that point. Now, if they go here, he's not scary anymore. And the only reason I can play h6 is because we actually have enough pieces on the king side. We're not even that much worse on the king side anymore, right? And of course, Golubka, Mr. Golubka says, let's attack. He doesn't want to retreat. If you're attacking, retreating is like giving up the attack. Right? So we don't want that for white. And white says, if you take, I dare you. Because if you decide to take, you can run away, but then g6. And this pawn will be your downfall. We don't have a defender knight. We don't have anyone to cover this. So this is like game over. Even queen g6, which is a bit more interesting, will get hit with f5, and all their pieces are coming in. If you feel that all their pieces are participating, probably you're doing something wrong, okay? Because you just unleashed a monster, right? Think about it this way. So, rook d3, this is a key move. I was really proud of this because we're stopping their biggest threat of f5, right? We're never scared of e5 because queen f5 trades off the queens, opens up light squares, hallelujah. But after rook d3, we're stopping f5 because then we have rook g3, and the rook comes in to stop their attack just in time. The queen was annoying, but no longer, right? And the bishops finally do something. The bishop pair starts to pay off. I find that the pawn storm positions with kings on different sides really get influenced by bishop pairs. The bishop pair matters even if they have pawns running down our side. Even though they have the open file, I don't, right? But because we have the bishop, that counteracts the problems. So they have to run away, and we don't like the rook looking at us. So they have one threat. I still don't want to take. It's not an appetizing knight. It's not an ice cream you want to eat. So queen e7. Let's get out of there. e5. Here we were approaching time control. It's move 31, but still we're getting down on time, and we want to get something easy. Now, if I had a bit more time than I did, I would probably just take and say I'm not scared. Yeah, but maybe at that point you call the arbiter and say, this guy's cheating, you know, he's not scared of anything, what's wrong with him? So I just played the human move. I just said, let's trade off the queen. Let's forget about their attack. And once the attack is gone, that guy's a target, bishops come to life, their knight's weird, bishop's not doing much, pawns are split, right? Our pieces are all active, especially if we can trade the knight there. We're very happy. Okay, so we trade off that queen, get rid of it, and the problem is, what can they do? I said that we're happy to trade off that knight at any time, right? And the knight is running out of options, simply. Okay. If we were a bit smarter, we could just take the knight and get away with it, but this is very hard to play, whereas this is a very pleasant endgame. And now to finish off, I want to show you the last part of the endgame, because later on we will see something very study-like, that's very pretty. But first we have to fast forward to that endgame. Let's get rid of that knight. The only reason we trade off the bishop pair is so we get this guy as a target, and we can start picking at him, and we get the back ring. So it's a transformation of advantages, right? We have one good thing, we trade it in for another good thing. Now their bishop hates them, along with their king, right? Knight c6 coming, knight f7 coming, or knight e6 coming. All of them are good. They try to get some room for the king, of course, but knight f7, let's go for the target. Very hard to keep it alive. Takes. He has to try and get something in return, but of course we value this guy a lot more than that guy. This is the guy I want to lose. The soldier here does me no good right now. I was gonna throw him away anyways, right? So he takes that guy, and we could play rook d8 right away, but there was something I didn't like, which is maybe king c2. And then the bishop can come out and we lose most of our advantage, the king gets to come alive. So after thinking for a bit, I said, let's scare the knight first, use the activity here, right? They can take here, but okay, we win an exchange, I guess, right? I'm very happy with that. And they can run away, but then we take on c3, right? Whichever way they run, we have bishop c3, then we stick the bishop on a godly square, bring in the knight, and we're just winning here. This is a fantastic position with so much coordination, right? And they have no counterplay. So c4, they try to keep this guy well hidden, but rook d8, here comes the rook. Now, this doesn't work so well, because the second ring. The bishop is clear, yeah? So if they go here, they don't have this anymore because we have rook d1. And they can't run away because rook b2. So pushing this pawn when there is a bishop on the long diagonal is usually bad. Usually gotta cost you, okay? So they decide to get rid of that annoying bishop, understandably. But at the end of all those trades, we win an exchange. Their back rank fell, and we reap the fruits of our labor, right? The exchange. And now we get this fascinating endgame with king a2, where they have a pawn for the exchange, and both sides are gonna have pass pawns. Of course, we're better. The rooks are fantastic. They're coordinated, but we have to be careful. You know, GMs are tricky. They're not gonna go down sitting or lying down. Yeah. So let's be precise here. Attack. Every move should come with a tempo. While the iron is hot, we have to strike. Yeah. So we can win this pawn. We can win that pawn. So that's great for us. But it becomes a race. One majority against the other. All right. They start running their pawns. We start running. They can't run yet because I think they cut off the king. This is real bad. They needed the cover for the king. So Petro decides to run the king, bring him closer, and then tries to bring the king here. And when the king is supporting the pawns, this can get scary. My king is not supporting, right? Check. I wanted to block that pawn, of course. Let's say hi to this guy. Check him again. Repeat moves whenever possible to get time on the clock. Scare off that knight. And the point is that if the knight goes away, I think I want a rook here. And then the rook will cooperate with his cousin or brother, yeah, to get rid of their pawns. But anyways, in the game we have check, runs away, king c5, tries to bring everyone in to the party. We have to act quickly, quickly, hit the knight. If we're slow, this is how you can lose a game, all right? So we hit the knight, we need contact as much as possible. They protect, because if they go there, at least we have a rook there, right? And now this guy's not very annoying. We can chase off the rook, and their king is blocking his own pawns at the moment. So they protect, and we start running. And at the end of all that, the knight wants to get in here, but we're not too scared about that because we always have rook f8, right? Rook f5 is a threat for them. They have to watch out for the forward, and we can trade off the rooks. And now we get this fascinating race. So knight against rook. It should be winning, as you can tell, right? Knights are very slow in such races. The rook can defend and attack. The knight can only do one or the other, right? So this is where the fascinating part comes in, because I allowed a little bit of counterplay. Already here, it was important to bring in my king. The king is in the square of the pawn, and this should be easily winning, to be honest. After check, we bring in the king. The pawn's not going anywhere. Checkmate coming. Game over. Okay. I decided to make it complicated and interesting. Maybe I wanted to make a YouTube video on it. No, I'm just kidding. I messed up a little bit. I played h3, and after knight f2, h2. Okay, this is coming in, and in fact I could have just promoted. Maybe this was the simpler way of doing it. We can just make a queen, but then the race becomes really interesting too. After takes, I thought he would try to kick me out. Also, they can play king c6 for that matter, and we try to bring in the king. They raise, we go there, they raise the king, and they need to bring up the other pawn. So let me give this to you as a puzzle right about now, actually. So we played g5, which is still good, c5, and now it's your turn. How do you win the endgame? Okay, there are only a few moves you can do, but the whole concept has to be seen before you play the next move. Okay, so take 3 seconds, feel free to pause the video. Black to play and win, only one way. 3, 2, 1. Good job if you found king e6. Very far from obvious, because the forced line that I was looking at in my head, I thought we go here, they promote, takes, push, or king here, doesn't matter because king b7, and here comes their pawn, and that's a problem. It's a big problem. So an important idea in these endgames with rook against the pawns is that the king blocks the bottom pawn and the rook covers the top one. Okay, and after c6, king d5, if I had only calculated this far, I'd realize we're just winning. Because if they ever promote, we take, king takes, and take, leaving us with a future queen, Queen Elizabeth III. Okay, and if they play, I don't know, promote right away, well, it's a good thing I can take, and king d5. So this would be simple. I decided to make it more interesting again. King e7, rook b8, king d8, stopping king c7, and now they can't get the pawn there, and we're in some sort of neutral zugzwang because their king can't move, their knight is stuck, but so is my rook. And I thought that the two pawns should do the trick, but it's not so simple because the knight will have this circuit, and this is where the study like endgame occurs. So how do we win this one? Let's explore. First of all, let's get the pawn here. Knight h1, right? Rook b3. At some point I want to threaten taking. Maybe not take yet, but threaten it. c5. We wait because it's almost like it's a zugzwang. So wait. They have no other move apart from back and forward, right? But I don't have much either because if I move my king, they have king c7. They start racing. Right? Fascinating endgame. And the cool thing here is I considered just running with the king because we can't take or we're in check, right? If the king was here, then we could take. So my first idea was let's run with the king. Let's allow them to go up. Let's take queen and queen. For a second I thought, okay, it's a free rook, right? But then there is this annoying little perpetual. And there is nowhere good for the king to go, because if we go up there, they always have this check winning the rook. And if we go to f7, they have this check. And there is nowhere for our king to escape their checks, and unless we want to lose, in which case this is how you could lose. Okay, so we can't escape the perpetual. And now I started thinking, and thankfully there was a second time control, so I had the time to figure this one out. I realized that the reason we're not winning that position, right, around here, is because the rook can't help, and neither can the queen. And I thought, if only the pawn was gone, then life would be great, wouldn't it? So that's how we figured out that I have to give up the pawn, and only then we can promote. So the right idea is, wait up for it, wait for it, a little bit more. Now it's time to run. So we want to win the race, yeah? Bring the king over there. They run too, and now we can finally push. And the reason we push is to give up the pawn, because the pawn was getting in our way, right? And they have to go there, otherwise we promote with 2 pawns. So they have to take, we take, they promote, we promote, and it's almost the same as before, with the difference that the rook isn't hindered by the pawn. Now we can hide from their check. So the game ended in a very cute way. They chase us, chase us, chase us. We can finally block the checks. There are no perpetuals here. You'll find that the king and the queen help out, okay? And for example, after this, we have the counter check, which is very important, okay? So now they start running their pawn, and it took me way too long to win this, but the finish is very cute. So let's fast forward. Check, check. We're up a rook, but still a little tricky. We have to watch out for, stalemates, things like that. Always be careful to the end. They give up the queen, because otherwise my queen comes over here and we're just completely winning. So they give up the queen, and now we get this endgame. It should be winning, right? It's not a bishop pawn, not a rook pawn. But even this is tricky, because they get their king here. And what do you think? Should we take, guys? Free pawn? Yeah, stalemate? No. So for a second, I was very scared that I messed it up. And then I realized we're so close to the king that we can allow the queen and checkmate. And that's how the game ended. Okay? I hope you guys enjoyed the game as a whole, and especially the endgame. And you see the power of doing studies, right? Endgame studies, that if we solve enough calculation puzzles and endgame studies, then you will find moves like g3 and the whole concept in your variations. Okay, so keep playing, and until next video, bye bye.